about gains, I mean, we're talking about the average individual thinks of gains as interest earned. And there's this misconception, you know, average America would say, hey, if I hit the lottery or I get 50 or $100,000, I'm just going to put the money in the bank and live off the interest. It's like, that's not how that works, right? So when we're talking about gains, we're really talking about interest earned on your money, but you have compounding interest, you've got simple interest. Talk about some of the gains. Like when we're talking to the average individual who just doesn't know, who's not financially literate to a certain extent, or who hasn't, you know, done the research on their own, they're out here, they're just working and they're putting money here, putting money there, and they're just looking for interest. You know, they don't really know the different types of interest. What are the different types of interest that when we speak of gains, what are the different types of interest that people are looking at?
Yeah, to start off with simple interest, it's very simple that's why the word is kind of built that way. Simple interest, if you had $100,000 and you had a 5% return every year, you get 5% on the original $100,000 deposit. So that's a $5,000 simple interest return year after year after year. So you're not compounding those dollars. That 100 becomes 105 because it's 5,000. The following year you get 5,000 again because it's off the original deposit. You're not getting the growth off what the new balance is from one year to the next. So you're not getting 5% of 105 the following year. You're still maintaining the 5 off the 100. So that's what simple interest is. It's just stacking that percentage year after year after year on top of each other to get a cumulative number at the end, versus compounding, where if you went 5% to keep the numbers the same in terms of percentage, your 100 becomes 105 after year one, then your 5% goes off the 105, not the 100. So that compounding does become a significantly different number versus the simple interest. Some of these fixed index annuities do a lot of simple interest. So you're guaranteed a certain percentage of gain, but you are also allocated within the market, so to speak, whether it's the S&P, the NASDAQ, Barclays. There's so many different options out there to where you can participate in the simple interest and the possible return that year, to where you get both. You don't get one or the other. But if the market doesn't return, then you get the simple interest that year. So there's not a lot of compound interest when you're talking about guarantees on the annuity front, but it does allow some of these gains to occur separately, because it's kind of a two-pronged approach, because it's kind of settling in a simple interest option which has a lot of these guarantees that happen year to year to year on the simple interest, versus where someone's just in a compound interest environment, like a 401k, IRAs. Those are compounding interest. Mutual funds, stocks, those kind of things all typically have compound interest, depending on how that's set up and what products you're participating in. But the compounding typically is going to have a much greater number at the end versus the simple interest, because it's just calculated differently in terms of deposit versus the account balance. So the simple interest can lag behind, but if you're comboing that with the ability to have gains with it, now all of a sudden that becomes a whole different reality that compares more to the compound interest, but still is protecting you from the downside risk, which is something that really needs to be calculated and discussed, because you and I, we've just talked about it here again today, that stair step versus EKG mentality, that the big peaks and valleys of an EKG versus just taking a step and flatlining if the markets go south that year, and then having to build from there versus trying to catch back up to what you lost.
Yeah. And with compounding versus simple, kind of like you said, you got to have the discussion, because there's a right time and a right place for everything. Right. And it's just like we just said about the market. It could be the best time for you to ever get into the market or stay in the market right now. The same thing with somebody who is looking at a situation where, you know, simple interest is the best option for them versus somebody who may have more time where compounding interest is a better option. So, I mean, it just really comes down to whatever the client's need is. And I think that's what we really are tapping into with Financial Thirst, is saying, hey, everybody's not the same. You know, everybody's diet is not the same diet. Everybody's vision is not the same vision. Everybody's vehicle is not the same vehicle. And we've all got desires and interests and things that we want to do and want to explore. And it's really individualized, which a lot of these plans are not. You know, we've talked about it. The companies who have 401ks established, you know, everybody's participating in the same plan, but everybody's goals are not the same. And when we start looking at helping clients and breaking down their financial picture and seeing what it looks like for them individually, it's an advantage for them simply because of that fact. We can break their situation down. We've talked about it before, where we can listen. Hey, what do you want to accomplish? What is the goal for this money down the line versus a group plan or a group situation, or sometimes even a money manager who, you know, may treat you like you don't have enough, right? So, I mean, it is something to look at when we're thinking about individual situations, is what's the perfect fit and what's the perfect situation for you. And it always depends on what is the goal down the line. Where are you trying to go? What are you using the money for? And a lot of different factors.